Who are 6 tight ends you want to target as early fantasy football sleepers in 2023? It's time to break down the position right here, right now, as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. I'm looking forward to the draft at Sporting News. I have the big board updated through the top 140 players, but really deep with those positional rankings. Then I put that in a blender and I spit out my 7-round mock draft. That's live right now at Sporting News. We'll dive into that here shortly on Locked On Fantasy Football, but we got to finish our look at the early fantasy football sleepers across positions. If you missed our look at quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, check it out on our archives, whether you're watching on YouTube or subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. Follow us. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we will dive into the tight ends here, and good stuff here to have a nice class coming in of tight ends, but we know it takes a year for some of these top rookies to really manifest themselves in the fantasy football realm and be trusted producers. So we're going to focus quite a bit on some second-year guys that we're going to look at that are in good situations to produce, and really excited about those guys' upside, as well as a couple guys in really good situations here that should build on some previous fantasy success in 2023. Now, looking at the top scores from last year, the usual suspects when you're looking at the top 16, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Mark Andrews are your top 4 from last year. Hawkinson really helped from that trade to the Vikings from the Lions, but Kelce, Kittle, Andrews have been consistently in that top 3, so Hawkinson crashes that party. Taysom Hill, a bit of an anomaly there, the way the Saints used him. He had those big touchdown games. He was used as a running back in those games pretty much, and he had that value at tight end. So interesting there that he finished at number 5. You have Evan Ingram back on the franchise tag. He finished at 6, so he was a good revelation in Jacksonville, and he's back in the offense. Cole Kmet was a sleeper. He actually exceeded expectations. He had some big games in the middle of the field early in the season, but kind of faded. Part of it was the passing game in Chicago didn't have a lot of volume, but to do that finish as tight end 7, it tells you 2 things: that Kmet was pretty productive in relation to the rest of the tight ends, and 2, the tight end field wasn't all that deep in producing reliable fantasy scoring that could put you over the top. So if you had Travis Kelce, he definitely was a huge asset on your teams last year because of the scoring advantage you had at this position. Pat Freiermuth is also in the top 12. Tyler Higbee had a good start to the season. He cooled off, so some guys that had some spikes, but maybe not as consistent as we would like as tight end ones. Dalton Schultz, we know, was on the shelf for most of the year, so that hurt his numbers here. But he still finished there in the top 12 at number 10. Juwan Johnson, even with Taysom Hill on those numbers, he had some nice games for the Saints. He's back with now Derek Carr. Quarterback, you have Dallas Goedert there at 12, rounding things out. He missed a lot of time. He would be a lot higher than that if the injuries had not taken their toll. David Njoku was a nice surprise at tight end 13. Dawson Knox, a little bit of disappointment at tight end 14. You had Gerald Everett flash for the Chargers, and then Tyler Conklin. So we want to see where we were. Now, 2 guys that we figure are going to finish in the top 12 in some form. Kyle Pitts, there he had the injury issues last season. Couldn't get the ball to him with Marcus Mariota consistently. So now you have Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke giving him the ball. So Pitts should be back right there as a top tight end 1 once again after a break from his rookie season. So the rare rookie that really produced here and faded in his sophomore season, but usually it goes the other way around. But Pitts definitely can blame the injury there. Darren Waller I'm intrigued to see what he can do in his new home with the Giants. They don't have a lot in the receiving corps. When you look at that, there's a big opportunity for Darren Waller to produce. He's just a little bit older. He's got to stay healthy. But you figure those are two candidates to sneak in there. Now, you look at maybe tight ends that you take out of that top 12. I mean, Taysom Hill, clearly a guy that's not going to have that finish again. But then you also look at Tyler Higbee. Again, rested a lot on those big numbers early. If they're healthy at wide receiver in Los Angeles, you figure Higbee's going to fade a little bit with his target share for the Rams. I know they don't have much else in that position, but I can also see Higbee fading further here from reliability. So pretty much the rankings are the same. You have Kelsey 1, Andrews moves up to 2 back in his consensus spot, Hawkinson 3, Kittle 4. So a lot of the familiar names in those positions from last year. Dallas Goedert back into the top half there. Evan Ingram staying in the same offense. Pat Freiermuth has a young quarterback. So Dalton Schultz going to the Texans in a real good spot there, and as well as David Njoku now getting Deshaun Watson for full senior quarterback. So a lot of things that make sense to not shake things up too much, but I think there's going to be an opportunity for some of these other tight ends to rise up here. So Chig Okonkwo, we're going to start with him. Chig Okonkwo is really a very talented athlete here for the Titans. They don't have much else right now in the passing game. They moved on from Robert Woods. Traylon Burks is still going to get his feet wet as a secondary player as well as Okonkwo. So right now, I think the Titans would be exploring the possibility of adding tight end depth in the draft, but Okonkwo would get every chance to be an athletic receiver and make plays there. So I'm excited to see what he can do with a more regular role. The Titans, this iteration of their offense, I still think trust the tight end. Again, Ryan Tannehill and Malik Willis need someone to throw to other than the wideouts. And really, Nick Westbrook, Akine, and some of those others that they have complementing Burks, just not enough there. So Okonkwo, very athletic guy, can stretch the field, can make plays all over the field. You figure he's in a great situation. We always look at, is he in the top 3 in targets on his team? Potentially, yes. That definitely comes into play for Okonkwo. Is he an offense that is limited in the passing game? Yes, but I think with a guy like him, they might use him a little bit more. We've seen the finish well when they've had the guy in there, and there was Delaney Walker in this offense before. So they've been looking for that type of guy. Austin Hooper hasn't been quite been it. Jeff Swain, those type of guys are not it. But Okonkwo can finally answer that question pretty strongly here with an athletic presence in the passing game. Greg Dulcich, speaking of great athletes that are going into year 2, Dulcich flashed definitely for the Broncos last year, and you have now Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi. We saw Gerald Everett finish pretty well with his scoring at number 15. You have a Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, also from the Saints adjacent to original New Orleans offense there and what they're doing. So it all points to Greg Dulcich really having an impact with this coaching staff of Payton and Lombardi. And it's really about, can he be the third key, second or third target here? I don't know if I trust Gordon Sutton to be consistently healthy. So Jerry Jeudy working the middle of the field. We liked him as a sleeper wide receiver. So Tim Patrick, a possession guy, I think it's going to flow through some of these guys a little bit more. But Dulcich should get more involved. He really was impressive as a rookie. There's not a lot of competition there. Albert Okwuegbunam is the backup, but we thought he was a sleeper last year, but he faded pretty quickly in this offense as Dulcich got healthy and emerged here. And they also had Chris Manhertz, but not a lot to see there. So Dulcich also in a great situation to get some key targets for the Broncos, much like his second-year brethren, Chig Okonkwo in Tennessee. Now, there's one more notable second-year tight end that's a deep sleeper that we'll look at in our final segment here. We do have 3 segments on the show, so 2 veterans coming up that you might underlook on the fantasy football radar tight end in our next segment here. It is an exciting time of the year to get in on FanDuel. I know NFL is over. The college basketball March Madness just ended. The NBA playoffs are almost here. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. It's easy. Look at it here on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you just download it from FanDuel.com, and FanDuel.com/lockedon is going to give you a special shot at that no-sweat first bet. Just download the app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drain. It's a lot of fun because you can check out the core markets, really load up on some games here. Got player props, of course, that are really fun to play. Player points, rebounds, assists. I love to parlay those with a game result. And there's so many more exclusive bets. So there's one called a 2x3 that's particularly interesting. 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. Yeah, that's a good thing to get in the action. So plus FanDuel, as I mentioned, even lets you combine your bets for a chance at an even bigger payout with same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get to your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check out the screen there. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, as well as a sponsor of this podcast, Locked On Fantasy Football, and NFL betting as well. All right, it is time to continue the show here and look at our sleeper fantasy football tight ends early in between NFL free agency and the draft. And we'll go to Arizona. And you might think I'm talking about Trey McBride, also another second-year tight end, but no. Zach Ertz is still in the mix. And why this is important is that DeAndre Hopkins can be on the move here. If that's the case, then Ertz is sitting pretty here with Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown being a key target. Ertz, put up some big numbers when Hopkins was sidelined last year in Arizona. First full season coming over from Philadelphia in that trade. Well, second lease on his career here that we didn't think was going to continue too much, but he's still working ahead of Trey McBride. He's a key target that can get open everywhere. Kyler Murray, Colt McCoy, it doesn't matter. I think he can get it done with either. Maybe they go a different direction quarterback. Does David Blau need to play here with those guys a little bit banged up? But Ertz is still in a good position there. So new coaching staff is definitely going to get Ertz open a little bit more. There's also that Eagles familiarity that you have with Jonathan Gannon. So a little bit of Eagles connection, maybe being treated more like Goddard here. So I'm going to look at with Ertz, and we know Goddard was right there as a tight end one, the bottom of the line there. So Ertz, I think, will have a bigger role going forward, and they're going to trust him more. I mean, he's one of their few veterans, especially if Hopkins is on the move, which we expect to happen here. So again, we like Marquise Brown taking advantage of that. I think Ertz could do that a little bit more with his red zone ability and some other things to be a higher possession guy, maybe so than looking at Rondo Moore working in the slot. Now, Hunter Henry, they added a tight end in New England with Mike Gesicki, so you might think that splits the position again, with Jonnu Smith being traded to the Falcons. Here we are again with two tight ends that are capable here, but why it's Hunter Henry versus Gesicki? I think Gesicki helps Henry because you look at Gesicki, he's limited as receiver, and Henry's really good in that capacity. He was riding his touchdowns a couple years ago to good fantasy football relevance in his first year in New England, coming over from the Chargers. But now you look at Henry playing off this tight end set will be good. And there's really not a lot of wide receiver. They have Juju Smith-Schuster. I know they still like Devontae Parker and what he can do this offense, but still, I think Henry's going to have a key role, and it's going to open things up here because you're going to have to commit somebody to Gesicki to keep him contained. Henry is just a better overall tight end and red zone finisher than Gesicki, so that's where I'm going there in that 12 personnel that you're probably going to see quite a bit here from Bill O'Brien. Interesting development. There are some rumors of the Patriots might be shopping Mac Jones. I don't think it really matters who the quarterback is there because they're going to get the ball to Henry in key situations in favorable coverage here. So really excited about the possibility of those two tight end sets with Henry and Gesicki. Gesicki also might have some value in the backdoor, top 15, top 20 there. But Hunter Henry, someone to watch, especially because of the touchdowns that he's capable of producing, a little bit more confident passing game from the Patriots. All right, we do have that secondary player still to talk about. He'll come in our final segment here of the show. Now, we're talking about the future and draft picks, a loaded draft full of tight ends, including Michael Mayer of Notre Dame, Dalton Kincaid of Utah, Luke Musgrave out of Iowa State, Darnell Washington, Georgia. List goes on and on of special guys that can make plays here out of tight end in the draft. Damon Parson, Keith Sanchez are looking closely at the top prospects across positions there on Locked On NFL Draft. Subscribe, follow for free, just like you do wherever you get your podcast with Locked On Fantasy Football. We're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So check it out. Damien and Keith really keep you up to date on the prospect news, what teams are thinking on the clock here. So really a good in-depth draft coverage that you get here on the Locked On Network as well. All right, it is time to close the show looking at two sleeper tight ends. These are guys ranked outside the top 12. They can finish inside the top 15 here this season as a moderate success story and startable player. Juwan Johnson comes in. He actually as we mentioned, was pretty high as a tight end last year, number 11 in scoring and half-point PPR. But this kind of dumped him a little bit. Now, they didn't really add too much. I don't think Adam Troutman is going to be a factor. I think Johnson separated himself from Troutman as a key target. Now, you have Derek Carr, likes to target the tight end quite a bit. We know from his days with Darren Waller. You have Chris Olave and Michael Thomas there, but I think they need a third option to emerge. They don't have a lot of wide receivers, so Juwan Johnson would make a lot of sense. They brought him into the mix. He's a favorite of the coaching staff. He can make a lot of plays. He can finish the red zone. We've seen that apparently and evidently here throughout his career. So really, Juwan Johnson doing his thing here and really being a force for the Saints. And again, the quarterback upgrade is certainly going to help. Again, Carr likes to throw the short intermediate. He's going to find the open guy. And with players that are capable of scheming themselves open with one Chris Olave and Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed and his speed, you're going to open things up and open up the intermediate routes there for Juwan Johnson. So I think he's sleeping again. I think, again, everyone has been on Taysom Hill. Now the shine is on Adam Troutman a little bit, but Juwan Johnson just is consistent, delivers here, and the Saints do appreciate that. I think he'll have a big role here for them going forward. The last tight end is our second-year sleeper that we're going deep for. It's Jelani Woods of the Colts. Yep, the Colts have a new offense, so very similar. The Eagles' concepts are slowly drifting, even though they came from the defensive side of the Cardinals. Well, they're definitely having their impact with the Colts, with Shane Steichen, the former offensive coordinator of the Eagles, taking over. But they should use tight ends a little bit more effectively now. They could use 12 personnel and have two tight ends on the field. I think the odd man out here is Mo Alley-Cox in this mix. So Jelani Woods definitely has been treated as a plus athlete and their top receiver at the position in year two. Should improve on his route running to be more effective here for this team. The Colts also should upgrade their quarterback situation. Gardner Minshew, if he's in there, he's not too bad. He can facilitate to some of the playmakers, but they could use a bigger arm there to take advantage of Jelani Woods in the mix at tight end here. So I do like Woods quite a bit. I liked him coming out of Virginia. You have Mo Alley-Cox, who's been limited here with his usage by default. He's been catching passes. They haven't had that real threat for fantasy since Jack Doyle. So now you look at Woods and what you might get elsewhere. The Colts are in a pretty good situation. I mean, Mo Alley-Cox, Colin Granson is the other option here. Both have had their chances to really step up in this offense, but now you have a different style of offense with Steichen, his influence, thinking about Anthony Richardson and the high ceiling there with a running quarterback. So all kinds of things are at play for this Eagles offense that is carried over to the Colts under Steichen. So Jelani Woods, I think, is just a good position, the beneficiary there for him. So I think Woods, I like his athleticism. It really comes down to that. Can they play in the move position, get open, and be treated as wide receivers? Okonkwo, we said, pretty high on the depth chart, given the Titans are pretty thin at wide receiver. The Broncos need that key third target to emerge. And with the Jelani Woods, it's just Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. Now, changing up from that, they lost to Paris Campbell in free agency. So really just trying to figure out the best options that they have in the books here. And really, they're not too worried about what they have at tight end because there's some depth there for Steichen. You can look at it, and also in the draft, they can address that as well. So I expect the Colts to think about tight end at least in the draft if they're not thrilled with what Woods can do. But I think he's got some skill to be on the field a lot more than he is so far. So looking forward to that for sure there. So there's your tight end sleepers. Number 1, Chig Okonkwo of the Titans. Number 2, Greg Dulcich of the Broncos. Number 3, Zach Ertz of the Cardinals. 4, Hunter Henry of the Patriots. Number 5, Juwan Johnson of the Saints, and Jelani Woods of the Colts. So this position we know is going to be unpredictable. There's guys that appeared last year that we didn't expect. Higbee being one of them. Bill said Njoku put together a pretty good season, but really the cream rises top, and thankfully there's going to be more cream at this position coming up soon. Now, what do we think about Michael Mayer? If he goes to Packers, there's something to think about there, but the Packers still could be wide receiver centric more so, even in replacing Robert Tonyan. So that's something to think about there. In that direction, I think you look at other situations for rookies. Dalton Kincaid is a special player, so that would squash some value if he ends up on a team that has a veteran tight end as number 2. But really, you have a good spot for these 6 guys to really produce here in fantasy football in 2023. And again, I think the tight end class is going to be a lot better here overall and have a lot more value. It's cyclical, right? We lost a lot of tight ends. We need to reload it a little bit. And there happens to be some really good athletes here in this class from this position. Not only athletes, but good receivers here to put up some impact. So I think when you look at the tight ends, it's been one of those positions that some people don't want. They just want to throw it in with a flex position, and that's it. But really, tight end is important because it's a really key position for a lot of teams. We know we saw it firsthand with Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl, and T.J. Hawkins kind of woke up the Vikings offense a little bit. And George Kittle was a big part of what they did down the stretch. So excited about second-year tight ends for sure. That's a good year wheelhouse. I mean, we look at third-year wide receivers. Well, wide receivers have gotten better and more productive earlier. I think the tight ends are still on the same timeline here. So that's good stuff there. But Okonkwo, Dulcich, Ertz, Henry, Johnson, and Woods are our sleepers at tight end. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. We'll have more advanced scouting for you on the next show, looking at the draft there for you. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft dudes from NFL free agency to the draft, salary cap management, more. Very NFL experts, Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. You can find Locked On Scouting with the draft dudes wherever you get your podcast on YouTube, just like this show. And just like this show, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Vinnie Iyer and myself, and this has been a look at the tight end sleepers that you want to look at on Locked On Fantasy Football. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll check you out there to close the week with a couple shows looking NFL draft.